You went to Paula's funeral, is that what it was?
Yeah, they asked me to officiate. So it was on
Is she
Saturday.
still driving?
She was.
My recollection of her is she drove me somewhere.
Yeah.
She volunteered to drive, and she did a pretty good job.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, she was driving all the way until.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
it's hard.
Mm-hmm.
When you separate from the group, and
Yeah.
you don't want to intrude, so you don't reach out, or you know what I mean.
Mm-hmm.
But
She followed online
yeah, I saw that a few times.
for like pretty regularly.
Right.
She moved back with her daughter
Right. She told me
and
when
grandkids.
they were building or fixing up an apartment for her.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was a good gathering.
Yeah. Nice. And I'm glad you were able to do it for her.
Yeah, it was nice to be able to do it. I had never been to Rhode Island before.
How's that? Country?
Well, the part where they lived was on the east side, and it was kind of more like small town feel.
Okay, got it.
Yeah. We drove the day after Sully and I drove around, and yeah, it was a little more like suburban feeling on the other parts, but the east side was like kind of like old small town.
Right, got it.
Yeah.
No, Florida is so transient. You come, you meet people, and then they go back to wherever they came from really quick too. It's like,
Yeah,
yeah.
it's true. Yeah, everybody moves back, it seems, at some point.
I guess because most of the families there.
Unless the family's here. Yeah.
I don't know many original Floridians like being born, except for the younger
Yeah.
group that were born here.
Yep. Lori Reiber, she's native born, so like she went to Fort Pierce High School. Yeah, and I don't know if you remember Dave Hill. Chris Hill she sings sometimes. She's in the choir. So her husband Dave, he actually went to the high school with Lori.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, but there's just a handful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's so weird.
Morning.
Hi.
Native Floridians.
Yeah.
Cold again.
Yeah. What's going on?
The other day I had the air conditioning on, and then I have the heat on.
Don't worry.
Yeah,
It'll be gone soon, and then you'll be like.
I'll be complaining about the heat. Is it easier for you if we all sit in the same area, or does it matter?
It doesn't matter. It's fine. Thank you. As long as they don't turn too fast in your direction when you talk, get whiplash or anything.
The last couple of weeks have been not difficult, but you have to pay attention.
Oh, with the readings?
Yeah, with the readings and stuff, yeah. It's been,
You know, so I think both of the more recent ones were like from the 1400s.
Oh, is that right? Oh, yeah, right.
Yeah.
Maybe that's,
So it's like people's, not only the way they write, but kind of the way they think, I think is different than what we're used to.
it's like I have to concentrate.
It's annoying, right?
I'm not used to that.
Yeah, sometimes the older stuff you have to really read slow.
Right.
I know that's like, if you read Paul's letters, I don't know if it's just him or like everybody else was that way too, but the way they construct their thoughts is like really, it's almost like they're jamming all these different thoughts. They're connected, kind of, but it's like they're cramming
To one
8 or
sentence.
10 things into a couple sentences instead of like what we're used to is more like more sequential or something. Yeah.
I've always had problems with Paul. I just liked him when I was a teenager.
Mm-hmm.
But I've come to think that I like the stories and the parables of the other gospel writers. But he, being traveling Europe and the Greeks and Romans, he has essays. Well, to me, that's more brain dead stuff, essays, where to me the gospels and the parables all can be lively.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's where I feel I have a problem. It took a lot of years. I like it, and now
It is, if you think about it, it's kind of interesting that the stories and even the teachings, they're really simple, almost like Proverbs type of things. If that was what Jesus was teaching and that's what people were remembering, he really, his writing is really different. It really is abstract. It's more like academic almost. You know what I mean? It's like theological arguments.
it's like when you're in philosophy class, it's
Yeah.
an essay.
Yeah.
It's not as interesting as English class where they have stories.
Right. Yep.
But
Yeah, it's like rational thought philosophy.
And I also like the way the Gospels are so vague that I have to try to put myself in to see where they're going. Because I find extreme thinking of either side is usually wrong.
Yeah.
And finding the balance is very, very hard for me to live.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's a lot of exaggeration in the gospel teachings.
Well, Paul does as
Like a lot. Yeah, Paul's there's not really any stories. I mean, the closest you get is Acts. And that's Luke. That's basically Luke part 2.
Now was Luke the scribe for Paul? Or was it
No.
Peter that uses?
Was Luke the doctor?
Lucas, they say, is a physician. Yeah, Luke's not. I don't think Luke is not one of the 12.
No, but when I studied him once, and that was 50 years ago, they may have changed their mind.
Yeah.
He was writing for some other person because he could speak in a European. He also started out in Europe and could,
Right.
we studied that first, Luke first, because he thought more like we did in America.
Yeah.
And I thought they said he was writing for someone else. A lot of the times, and I'm maybe there.
And Acts is really different from the rest of the books because it's like it's stories of what happened. It's not parables.
Yeah, it's stories. Yeah.
And it's a little easier to read because of it, because it's stories. And they throw in a little bit of like they're quoting other scriptures or saying this was to fulfill something or
But it's historical stories where the gospel stories are
Right.
parables, and
Yeah.
you got to really imagine where that's going.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, funny that a lot of Christians are really insistent on taking the Bible literally. You know, these things, like, as a whole, these things literally happened. But then the Gospels is like, you do have history in there of, like, you know, Jesus went to this town and talked to this person and all that. But Jesus doesn't use most of his teachings are done with allegories. They're not done with, like, factual. He's not saying, like, I knew this guy and he said this and he did this. And so you can't take it literally if it didn't happen, if he's making it up.
I had a good friend who was Baptist, and she just thought I couldn't, as a Presbyterian, know the Bible. But I could tell talking to her, she had not read the Bible. People told her what was in the Bible, and I think there's a world of difference.
Mm-hmm. Presbyterians are big on education, on Christian education. Maybe more than anybody.
I think the difference I sense between here and there, which I grew up in this denomination, it's very Presbyterian style, but I feel like it's more about doing. We had a place that took in women, whole families. If they were, like, if you got your car broke down, you still had a job, but you lost your house. We would put them in a hotel. We had a string of motels.
This was Presbyterian?
In Palm Beach Gardens. Mm-hmm. And then provide them food and a plan to get back on track. Mm-hmm. So it was, but that's heavily what they were interested in.
Yeah, yeah.
And then also education, real
right.
Education.
Yeah, there is a lot of outreach for Presbyterians. They kind of have both. The Congregationalists are, I think, more social action, more like helping change society, and because they had a lot of these societies, mission societies, that would either send people overseas or they'd have, like, these mission works within the United States.
When I was a kid, that's the way it was in the United Church of Christ.
Mm-hmm. We're ready. All right, we have 2 songs to start us off. Good morning, everybody. 2 songs to start us off today. We're going to start with "Be Thou My Vision." We'll go ahead and tackle all the verses, I think. Be thou my vision, O Lord of my heart. God be all else to me, save that thou art. Thou my best thought by day or by night, waking or sleeping, thy presence my light. Be thou my wisdom and I had 4 verses. How many verses did you have? Did you have 3?
And the third one I was told.
We're not on the same page, literally. All
I
right,
love
should
the
have
lullaby.
checked
You have a
first.
nice voice anyway.
Oh, thanks.
Good thing you can sing well.
All right.
I didn't know he was giving a lullaby.
All right, let's pray. God, we're grateful that you give us vision, you give us insight, you help us to see with your eyes, and ultimately, God, we want to see you. We want to see your loving presence at work in all things and in us. And let us see your work today within us as we open up your word and to contemplate our relationship with you. We pray in your name. Amen.
Before I forget, I just wanted, our son's taking us on a cruise this weekend, so we won't be in church.
Oh, nice.
Sounds good.
Yeah,
Sounds
except
fun.
I just want people to know there's a hole over there, not mass accident.
Oh,
The
good.
attendance will be cut in half. All right. Good morning, Judy. Good morning, Bob and Carol. Nice to see you all. And good to see you people sitting here with me. We're starting a new chapter. We're looking at John Woolman. Let me just find the page here. It's going to be 230. 230 is where we're going to start today. And basically, we mentioned this last time. John Woolman's born in the 1700s. He's born in the United States in New Jersey to a Quaker farm family. He grew up, he would have been, he would have been 50 years old when the American Revolution took place. And so that's the time period. So he's colonial America. Different from the last couple we've been looking at, different context. And we were talking earlier about how the writing style and the way of thinking for each one of these writers has been very different. Let me go ahead and show this. I found the table of contents that I had scanned, and I just wanted to, as I was kind of looking at what's next, I wanted us to kind of see what we've covered so far. Hi, Ashley.
Sorry, I thought it was 10:30, then I just got
Perfect. We're just getting started, so you're good. So this book, Devotional Classics, is broken into, I think it's 7 parts. The first part here is called Preparing for the Spiritual Life. This is kind of an introduction to the general topic of yours and I, our spiritual lives, our lives of faith. And that's, of course, where devotionals come in handy. These are reflections on living a life of faith and what that means. And then the 6 areas that we are looking at. The first area is the prayer-filled life, or the contemplative tradition. So prayer, contemplation, meditation, those are all kind of in the same area. This can be, a variety of things. Prayer can go in a variety of ways. An interesting way to pray is called the Lectio Divina, which is like a Latin word, kind of like the holy text. And essentially what you do with this form of practice, you don't have to use the fancy word for it. Just take the Bible and read it out loud as a prayer. And so the Psalms are usually a place that you would start, because these are prayers or songs. And so there's a few different ways to do it. Basically, the more effective way is to just kind of read slowly. And sometimes you could repeat a phrase You know, for example, if you're doing the 23rd Psalm, you might say, "The Lord is my shepherd. The Lord is my shepherd." And you could even repeat that as a prayer and just kind of let it sink in. There's even ways to break up a sentence so that you're doing part by part. The Lord. The Lord is my shepherd. So anyway, that's one of the ways that we could have kind of a reading prayer. When you get into the contemplative or the meditative tradition, this is it's a simple way to pray, but it's a hard way to pray, and that is to not use your words, but to essentially just to meditate in the presence of God. So one of the ways to think about it would be the people that you are closest to, that you love and you're most comfortable with. Those are the types of relationships where silence is okay. It's okay to sit with somebody and not say anything. I was just traveling with Suli, so we went to Rhode Island and back for Paula's celebration of life. So we're sitting in the plane together, we're sitting in the car together, and we talked a lot, but then there's also times where we're just sitting there. Now today, usually, you got something plugged into your ears or you're playing a game or something like that. But you can just kind of sit and be quiet. So this is, just think if you're praying, it's time with God, so you're just kind of sitting together. If you're sitting together with somebody that you're a stranger to or that you don't know very well, usually that's kind of uncomfortable to be sitting next to somebody and you don't know them. Unless you really, really don't know them and you haven't even said a word yet, then maybe it's easier. But anyway, the contemplative tradition, it's imagine sitting with God. Also, one of the ways that is supposed to help, because what we try to do in that place is to just let go of thoughts. So we try not to. It's easy once we're sitting down to just start thinking. And we might remember some things that have happened. We might be planning for the future. We might be whatever it is, whatever's on our mind that particular day. So the idea is to try to let go of those and as best you can to think about nothing. And that's really, really hard. One of the ways that if you read any, Father Thomas Keating is one who's written a lot about the tradition of contemplative prayer. And he talks about choosing a word to focus on. Sometimes like in meditation, you focus on your breath. So instead of thinking about a word, you're just thinking about breathing. It's the simplest thing to think about. It's right here, and it's an immersive experience because you're not just thinking about it, you're feeling it. And just thinking about breathing is one of the things that can kind of put your focus on next to nothing instead of on thoughts. And Father Thomas Keating talks about picking a holy word to come back to. So instead of just thinking about your breath, you're just kind of releasing thoughts. And when you find yourself kind of running after thoughts, come back to the word. And that word could be hope, love, peace. The word could be Jesus, Holy Spirit. Whatever it is, it's kind of coming back to that. So we haven't gotten into, techniques and things like that. But anyway, I thought I would
like to
mention
comment
that.
just on that. we had a minister, I had a minister back when I was a kid, 29 I guess, who for 20 years wanted to be able to have us meditate. I don't think he even got it. He even brought in someone from Ohio to teach us.
Yeah.
And all he ended up being able to do is to teach us to try to vision being in a beautiful place. And
Yeah.
just look at that. Because we could, no one in whoever went through our group could get to the point of emptying our minds.
It's a practice. It's a practice without a specific purpose, really. You're not trying to achieve anything, you know? And that's hard for us because we're so used to everything has to have a reason. Even when in faith, it's like a favorite phrase to use. Everything happens for a reason. So we're uncomfortable with the unknown, or we're uncomfortable with the thought of something might not have a reason. So like, and the things that are like really important to us, like what's the purpose of love? What's the purpose? Like, what's the goal of love? And it's like, well, the goal of love is love.
Yeah.
It's like, it's a goal in itself. So it's an action leading to the thing that you're already doing. So in a sense, love is not like, it's not a destination. You can't be like, oh, I finally made it. I made it to love, here we are. So these, like, prayer is kind of what we're doing is we're trying to kind of enter into the eternal nature of God. In eternity, there is no purpose. Because the only reason that you need purpose is time and space. Because it's like, in time and space, you have a destination for a journey, right? You go from this point in space to that point in space. And if you think about it, like, the stories are so important to us. Some of the stories are about the destination of getting from here to there. Some of the more mythical stories are you leave home, you go on these adventures, and you come back home, right? But it's a destination. It's like, it has a purpose. There's like this thing, this carrot dangling in front of you that leads you forward. So that's space. And then if you think of time, we think of things, goals have, like, there's sequences and steps to goals. Step 1, we need to, and then step 2, and then step 3, and then step 4, and then you reach your goal, right? So we're thinking in space and times. It's like we're obsessed with purpose and goals because that's the nature of time and space. You get into eternity, where God is, there's no goal. That's why when you look at the story of creation, it ends where God rested, and it's like, well, why does God need to rest? He's not going to get tired, but there's this thing of like, it's done, it's complete, it's finished, right? So when God creates this reality of time and space, it is perfect and complete in eternity. Now for us, we say, no, it's not perfect and complete. We haven't got there yet. We're on the way, and things are, there's a roller coaster that we're on right now to reach the destination of the culmination when everything comes together in this triumphal, glorious, God wins moment at the end, right? But for God, the moment that creation is created, it's done, it's complete, it's perfect, it's, so be perfect as God is perfect. It's not to go through a series of steps to reach perfection. It is like, be perfect as in the eternal perfection of purpose in eternity. It's just God. And in God, everything is perfect and wonderful and beyond all those words. So prayer is our practice to kind of get us ready for eternity. And we're so obsessed with purpose and fixing things and doing this and achieving that and getting over this and getting rid of that and fighting this. And it's like all of this incomplete stuff it's like, so this is what prayer is for, is like, give yourself a time out from time and space. Give yourself a time out and just put yourself into eternity for some moments. And there's no goal in it. So, like you said, how do you know you've done it? How do you know you're doing it right? How do you know, well, that's thinking with the other mind.
But everybody else knows what they're doing, and they're pretty sure that they're doing it right, and I don't know.
If somebody is doing it right, according to them or according to somebody else, it's probably not. Because you can't really, there's no achieving it. It's like, again, back to love. How do you know you're loving somebody? We might say, well, my relationship could still use some work. We can get to know each other more. We can work through stuff. We can accept stuff. We can have these goals. But any movement or intention toward love is love. It's like, no matter how small of a step it is, you're still doing it. It's a smile, it's a hug, and these are just like little steps. Even thinking about somebody is like, you're loving them. Whether they're here or they're not here, you're loving them just in that. So with prayer, it's like anything you're doing is, you're doing it. Just the intention of prayer is you're doing it. And you might not feel like, well, where I'm at and how I'm doing it, it doesn't feel like I'm doing it, or it feels like I'm messing up, or I'm not. Like in contemplating, it's like, I keep thinking. And it's like, well, because you have a brain, that's why you're thinking. If you weren't thinking, you'd probably be dead. You know what I mean? It's like, you need that thing to be working, so be glad for it. And so a lot of that is like, just we look at the stages of grief, right? And it's not just for grief, it's just like how to go through life, right? And ultimately, we're reaching the point of acceptance. If we can accept that we're thinking instead of fighting it, then usually it doesn't have that much of a hold on us. Because it's like, the more I think, don't think. No, don't think about that. Don't think. So it's like, then the focus becomes on fighting yourself instead of just letting it go. There's some good analogies. Think of, I've heard it described as watching clouds go by. So those are your thoughts, right? When you have a thought, think of it as a cloud in the sky. It's passing. Here comes another one. There it goes. Or even like being on the side of the road, a car goes by, there goes another one. Or watching people on a sidewalk. It's like, there's this movement of stuff coming. I mean, who makes our thoughts appear?
I'm hoping Christ helps me.
We really don't, if it feels like we don't make the thoughts appear, but we do. We're like the cowboy in the rodeo. We do try to grab onto it and hold on to it and wrestle it to the ground or let it drag us off or whatever. We do, once the thought comes there, then we kind of grab onto it. But it usually, we're not making the thought come up. If you're really quiet and the thoughts start coming, you'll be surprised, like, where did that come from?
Oh, the devil.
Well, I mean, it could be that. It could be that, but it's like, I'd hate to think that all of our thoughts are coming from the devil, you know? But there are some where you think like, well, I'm not taking credit for that. And that definitely wasn't God, so it must be some other force at work, you know? But the idea is just let it go. Just let it come, let it go. Let it come, let it go. And the more we just kind of relax into it, then we're not chasing after everything. It reminds me of my dog. We had a Labrador Retriever that was crazy about squirrels. The first time we walked this dog, we adopted him. He was like already 7 years old when we got him. First time we walked to school, Ian's like, can I hold the leash? So he holds the leash. He's like, I don't know, kindergarten, first grade. And it's like fall. And he holds the leash, and it's not like but a minute or less. A squirrel appears out of somewhere, and the dog just takes off. And Ian tries to hold on for like a few feet, and then he lands in a puddle, and he's completely covered in mud, and the stupid dog just like couldn't contain himself, you know? We have to go back and like change clothes late to school or whatever. But it's like that is what we do with thoughts, is like squirrel, and then we just take off. And it's like, so it's almost like, just get used to it. There's a lot of squirrels around here. They'll come and they'll go, and just let them run, and don't be obsessed with, I must chase this thing, you know? So that's a part of the prayer field.
Focusing on, now we're in a period of Lent.
Mm-hmm.
What is helpful about Lent? Is it where I just picture moving forward, or we have a lot of Lent sermons about the 7 deadly sins. Mm-hmm. How am I going to get rid of my jealousy, my envy, my eating wrong, or whatever? Where are we going to just, in Lent, say I'm going to focus more on just experiencing Christ as much as I'm capable?
Mm-hmm.
I'm trying to figure out how I'm going to experience Lent.
I think it's a great thing to think about every time we come around to Lent. And fortunately, you're going to have another one next year, and then another one next year. So you really could do something a little different each time. And I like it because I found I never try to lock myself into one particular thing. And again, it's not it's good to have maybe some intentions about what to do, but we should always remain open as to where we're ultimately led by the Spirit. And it might be you go into Lent and you think like, well, I'm really going to focus on the 7 deadly sins, and I'm going to really examine my life and look closely to see, you know, how did these things relate to me? You could enter Lent on another time, and that's the last thing that's on your mind is thinking about the deadly sins, but maybe more just a quiet time. I mean, 40 days of quiet time with Jesus, that sounds like pretty good, right? But I think it's really just being more intentional and less to think of it as a special time and a unique time. And I don't know that I have figured out what my focus is this time around. I'm not sure.
Every morning I go outside, and I have lots of herbs and plants and flowers, and I enjoy them. I take care of them and they feed my soul.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like every day that brings me closer to Christ. So what should I do different during those 40 days? I don't know. I can do better than just living life.
And if you're at a good, say you're at a, what you feel like is a good place, you're at a good sense of balance, or, you know, you kind of feel like I'm on track, things are good right now, don't change anything for Lent.
Oh, okay.
I mean, just stay in there and just say, I'm dedicating what I already started experiencing before Lent. I'm dedicating this to during Lent. You know, usually the three things we think about, what is it? Fasting, prayer, and almsgiving. So, I mean, these are just basic Christian tenets we should be doing all the time. Almsgiving is like just being generous, particularly with people that are in need. So we should always be like that as Christians. Prayer, hopefully we're praying all the time. You know, pray without ceasing. That's Paul's words. And then fasting, really the life of faith, the foundation of it is surrender. And surrender is fasting. Surrender is giving up. Instead of accumulating, or giving up instead of achieving, or giving up instead. And again, it's like, it's back to, we're doing what Mary did instead of what Martha did. And Mary is experiencing the eternal. And it looks like she's doing nothing, because according to the Martha way of thinking about life, she is doing nothing. And Jesus essentially saying, you need to do more of nothing, Martha.
And you need to give yourself permission to do nothing.
Yeah.
I've been very good at that, Mike.
Oh, good. Okay.
I 100%. I have a pot at home with a plant in it, and I found a real pretty little angel I could put in there, and she's reading a book. And I told with the plant thing, I told my husband her foot broke, and I'm so sorry about that. He said, "Oh, it looks like you're reading the Bible. She had angel wings in her garden." And then I said, "But her foot's broken now." And I said, "Oh, well, that's probably just me too, because I was reading so much it's like I couldn't walk around and get things done."
You're right, Joy. Giving permission to do nothing. Yeah, sometimes we need to be forced to do that. I think a lot of times when we get sick, we're overworked, overthinking, overstressed, out of balance, and our body is basically like, look, I'll cooperate with you to a point, but at some point I'm going to make you sick because you need to do nothing. You haven't done enough nothing, and that's why you're sick. So, yeah, a lot of times it's not fun to be sick, but sometimes when we finally get out of being, having the flu or whatever for a while, and you start to feel normal again, it feels great. And it's like, it's that point where you don't have enough energy to really go for it. You're kind of like needing to ease your way. It's a really good time because you appreciate normal. You don't overdo it because you can't, and you're really careful because you don't want, if you've ever relapsed before, you don't want to relapse. You don't want to have the flu a week and then have the flu another week because you decided to go, mow the grass or whatever. So yeah, sometimes it is reminding ourselves not to do anything or giving ourselves permission to do nothing. And that really fits into prayer. A lot of times prayer is kind of nothing. You can make prayer a list. You can have your list of who to pray for, and you can, it can be an active thing. But I think in a lot of ways it's real passive. So since we spent like all this time on one of the 6, the rest of them, the next one is the virtuous life or the holiness tradition. So this is kind of letting go of things in our life so that it's more whole and complete. Holiness is kind of that idea of being perfect or being good, being righteous, but it's also, I love the word healthy. Healthy, balanced, and whole. That's also holiness. So being virtuous means it means balance, and it also means doing good things. The charismatic tradition or empowered life. This is where we really experience the power of the Holy Spirit in our life in different ways. And it can be these joyful, exuberant experiences. It can be this really quiet, still small voice of God. It can be these moments of healing where we just cry rivers and waterfalls of pain, and the Holy Spirit is there, and it's like we're being healed, miraculously healed in the process of letting things go and in feeling things that are painful. Those can be like power of the Holy Spirit experiences. Compassionate life, social justice. This is where we kind of look around at the systems that we have created, the system of our own personal routine and goals in life, the system of our family dynamic, the system of a local community like a church, the system of a city, nation, state, the system of the world that we've put together, and we ask ourselves, in these systems that we've created, is it working? Is everybody included? Are we being fair? Is justice, are we being kind and merciful and just and right with one another? Are we taking everybody into consideration, or are we just focusing on ourselves? So that's kind of the social justice. Evangelical, that's where you're sharing the good news. You're taking not only the word of the Bible, the word of God in the Bible, but the word of God in your life, like the way that God's truth has transformed you. That's us being changed by the good news. So a lot of times sharing the good news is just telling people what's happened in your life. Because if you love God, God has meant a lot to you and has changed and transformed you. And just sharing your testimony, your story about what your relationship with God is like, a lot of times that in itself will encourage somebody else to have some kind of an improvement or in their own relationship with God. And then
I feel like being aware, making a connection with other people, and usually I do that with people. I was at Home Depot, and this young man wanted to help me. Well, I wasn't sure what I needed help with at the moment, but then he followed me around, and I listened to him, and I said, "Oh, you're from New Jersey." He said, "No, I'm not, but my mother is." And I said, "I can tell by your accent." He said, "Most people think I'm a foreigner." And they would have a little sadness about that. And I said, "Well, they used to joke about New Jersey, but I friended in New Jersey, and we went up there, and I was amazed how beautiful that state was." And so then he followed me even more. That was something he needed to hear.
Yeah.
His accent was not something that was to be ashamed of.
Good, yeah. Sometimes when we think of all the different Christian churches that are out there, sometimes we think of that as a negative. Why are we so split? Why can't we be on the same page? Why can't we be unified? Why can't we be one? Didn't Jesus say that we should be one? So that's one way to look at it. But another way to look at it is, with so much diversity, we have better chances of reaching more people because we have all these different ways to do it. So, somebody might not really click with me, but they might click with you, or they might click with you, but not with you. And so it's just kind of human nature. We connect with people, and a lot of it is our story connection. When we hear people's stories and when they hear ours, we find these common grounds and we have shared experiences. And I mean, that's the basis of support groups, is common experiences. And when people hear one another's stories, they say, your experience is like mine, so I can trust you, so I can share with you, because you'll understand me. Whereas another person, their stories don't really match up with my stories. I can't imagine experiencing what you're talking about because it's so foreign to me and so different to me. But somebody else could. So maybe having so many different churches is a really good thing that can be really helpful, that would allow us to share the word more. And then the last section is the sacramental life, or the incarnational tradition. And this is us really contemplating on how God is present in life. Incarnation means embodied. So God is embodied in Christ. God is also embodied in you and me. God is embodied in this creation. That's something that I think is important for us to remember, is somebody who's really good at this is Alan Watts, who he was a speaker. He actually was raised and trained as an Episcopal priest, and then he went and lived in Asia for like decades. And he came back and he described, probably better than anybody, the way the religions of Asia think and operate. And he was able to describe it in a way that made sense to people in the West. All right, so he's great at doing that. One of the takeaways in his lectures are much better than his books. And you can find them all over YouTube. But one of the things that he talks about is, you and I think we are an individual. And this is one of the greatest fallacies, because we could never exist without all the stuff and people and things around us. We need air to breathe, and we need food to eat, and we need love in our hearts, and we need to connect on other levels. And we could not live without this planet. Like, if you and I go out into outer space on our own to be individuals, we're not going to last more than a few seconds between there not being air and gravity and oxygen. Well, oxygen and air are the same thing. It's dark. You're going to freeze to death. It's like all these things. Like, we can only live when we're connected to this creation. So the life and energy of God is in this specific place for us. And so we're not an individual, because we're totally dependent on all these things. I didn't plant the food that I ate today, or harvest it, or transport it, or put it together. I just went and toasted something and scrambled something, and it's like, I didn't raise the chickens, and I didn't do any of that stuff. I didn't make these clothes that I'm wearing today. I didn't build the house that I'm living in. I didn't design and create the car that brought me here. I didn't go get the fossil fuel out of the ground to power the car. I mean, I didn't do any of that stuff. And I'm alive because of all these people doing all of these things, and creation cooperating, or us cooperating with nature to take this life and keep eating and keep moving and keep doing. And we just take it for granted. It's not even magical anymore. It's just we get annoyed. It's like, ooh, that doesn't taste good. Like, ooh, this is itchy. Or like, oh, my car is like using so much gas. It's like we complain about these miraculous things that make it possible for us to live. So there is like energy and the divine infused in all this stuff in life. And if we didn't have it, we wouldn't be here. We wouldn't exist. We wouldn't be able to live. So we need all of that. We're not... And it's silly because we even think about it in terms of like heaven. Sometimes we think, well, I'm going to be this little glowing ball of energy, off into eternity, and somehow I'm going to think and talk and I'm going to interact and all that kind of stuff. And it's like, just keep thinking about that until you realize like how boring and lifeless and just uninspiring that thing of being an individual little glowing ball of something is. It's like the book of Revelation talks about the end of times, and you know what it talks about? It doesn't really talk about going into life or into vague eternity. It talks about a new heaven and a new earth. So it's almost like we're going to do this again. Another time in another space, and somehow it's a new heaven and a new earth, because it's just impossible for us to imagine a really great life outside of like all this stuff that we're connected to. So that's incarnation. Next time, and we're not done for the day, but for next time, we're going to be, it's probably going to be 2 times from now because we're not making any headway into this chapter. Let's see. We're looking at The Word-Centered Life, page 288, and the name of the author is Sadhu Sundar Singh. Sadhu Sundar Singh. Sharing the joy with others. So that's going to be, probably not next time, but the time after that. But if you want to start getting ahead, we'll be going to 288. So I wanted to bring that back as a reminder. These are the things that we've been talking about since we started this book. C.S. Lewis and Dallas Willard, talking about giving all to Christ, cost of discipleship. Thomas Merton, Julian of Norwich, Ways of Meditation, Highest Form of Prayer. Yes, ma'am.
Just what's the name? Is it?
The name of the book? It is Devotional Classics.
Okay, I saw hers. I just wanted to double check. Okay.
Yeah, Devotional Classics by Richard Foster. And Gregory of Nyssa, Richard Roll talked about running the race, the spiritual frame. Thomas Kelly, Catherine of Genoa, Becoming a Holy Sanctuary, Waiting on God. William Temple, The Church's Impact on Society. Today we look at John Woolman, Breaking the Yoke of Oppression. We looked at E. Stanley Jones, The Habit of Reading the Bible Daily. G.K. Chesterton, A Magical Universe. So we've done a lot. I think we're probably going to finish the second reading of The Sacramental Life. So we've done 2 authors from each one of the sections. And then when we're finished with that, maybe a month from now or so, we'll make a decision about if we want to keep going in this book, we want to do another similar book, a totally different thing. So anyway, I've enjoyed most of it. Most of it.
That one lady, she took me in a whole new sphere talking about feelings.
Yeah, we talked a lot about feelings, didn't we? All right, so today, here we go. Excerpts from the Journal of John Woolman. So John Woolman, he's going to be talking about the simplicity of life, keeping life simple, not being trapped by material. Not nice. This is one of the books that is not available on an ebook. Most of the other ones are, but for some reason this one didn't make the cut. So John Woolman talks about kind of avoiding a materialistic mindset. And again, he was instrumental in a big part of the Quaker abolitionist movement to end slavery. And this was before, Emancipation Proclamation, what is it, 1860? 60, so 1860s. So this is a century before that takes place. People like John Woolman were already protesting this way of life. And for him and the Quakers, they're going to tie it into the only reason we would need to engage in something like the practice of slavery. You're just looking for cheap labor, or and the only reason you're doing that is because you want more, because you're not satisfied with just living a simple life. So he comes back to that quite a bit. All right. So section 1, the voice of the true shepherd. My mind through the power of truth, capital T, my mind through the power of truth was in a good degree weaned from the desire of outward greatness. And I was learning to be content with real conveniences that were not costly, so that a way of life free from much entanglements appeared best for me, though the income was small. I had several offers of business that appeared profitable, but did not see my way clear to accept them, believing the business proposed would be attended with more outward care and cumber than was required of me to engage in. I saw that a humble man with the blessing of the Lord might live on a little, and that where the heart was set on greatness, success in business did not satisfy the craving, but that in common with an increase of wealth was the desire of wealth increased. In common with an increase of wealth, the desire of wealth increased. There was care on my mind to so pass my time as to things outward, that nothing might hinder me from the most steady attention to the voice of the true shepherd. All right, so that's a great kind of beginning to his way of thinking. So this is this idea of greatness, financial achievement, success in business. I mean, for our society, this is really important. It's really major. It is, if you ever have the opportunity to travel outside of the United States, depending on where you go, oftentimes what you'll find is that there's a lot less of a focus on material things or commercial success. Whereas here, it is, that's what makes you awesome, is if you're rich and successful. And then we have categories like categories of celebrity is somebody who is even beyond that successful because they have other talents, usually singing talents, acting talents, sports. So they have these human talents that the average person does not have, and then they manage to capitalize on it in a business sense. So now they are famous and superhuman and really, really rich. And so that is kind of like the role model for all of us. Be more like these. Be more superhuman. Be more successful financially. And then sometimes it's not so much people that have, even people that are only successful financially somehow become celebrities just because they have a lot of money. And it's like their personalities can be weird, and they don't necessarily have a talent to sing or to act or to play sports or anything like that. They're just really, really rich, but they just act themselves, and they're like, oh my gosh, she's so awesome, she's so awesome. But this outward greatness is, this is 1700s, right? All right, so this is like way before. I mean, the ways of communication are like newspapers are kind of a new thing because the printing press is not that far away. So it's like reading books, reading newspapers. That's how you find out what's happening, and just word of mouth, gossip. I mean, that's just the way. So even then, in these networks of what's happening in the world, there are people of greatness, opportunities for greatness. So he recognizes at the beginning, this is available, this is an option. If this is what you want out of life, I mean, if you really want to be rich, if that's what you want and you make it your number one goal, you'll probably do it. You just have to make that number one out of everything else. And because there's people that are like not particularly talented or particularly smart, they just have the will and the desire to make it happen, and people can make it happen.
I have to add here, though, even if you don't have a lot of money, the living gets in the way of your faith, because I know a lot of people who have to have 2 jobs, maybe in the family 3 jobs. If you're young and you have a lot of expenses with children, you aren't getting rich. You're just spending all your time trying to pay the bills. So I grew up in the early 80s, is kind of like when I was in elementary school, and I'm one of 3 boys. I'm the oldest. And when I was born, my mom was a nurse. She stayed home with me, and then after my brothers were born, she stayed home with them too, and didn't go back to work until my youngest brother was in school. And so it was a 1-income family, and my dad was a pastor, so he's making okay money, but nobody gets rich with that career. So it's driving used cars. It's I would get hand-me-down clothes from my cousins. We did a lot of garage sale shopping. Even the bikes that we rode were garage sale bikes, $5, $10. But it was possible to live in a house with 1 income, and it's really hard to do that. Especially
almost
when you're
impossible
young
to do that
and
today.
income is less.
So I think one of the things that happened is that as time went on, from the 50s and into the present day, gradually it became much less of a 1-income and more of a 2-income family. And it's funny to think about. It's like, did we become 2-income because we wanted to, because we needed to? Because there had to be a point, because if nobody was doing it and then everybody's doing it, there had to be a point where it's like, what made us go from one to the other? Now there are some single income family now, but it's more difficult to find, because you kind of have to have a really high paying job in order to do that. Now, if you're willing to kind of make the sacrifices, you probably could make it happen. But we have become more materialistic in a way too. And if you think about it, it's like the toys that we buy for adults and for kids, and more outfits of clothing. I don't remember eating out at all as a kid. I mean, I think we went out to eat when we were on the road to get somewhere for vacation, maybe, Occasionally, if we did, it's like Taco Bell or, something like that. But it's like, just think about one of the ways that COVID really messed us up the most is people couldn't go out to eat. And that was like the big tragedy. The restaurants are going to close, and it's like, well, nobody's going to have a job, and we won't be able to eat out, and now it's crazy, because if you go out to eat now and you take a look at the bill when it comes, you're like, what am I doing? Why do I keep doing this? And then a few days later, you had forgotten about it and you do it again. It's just there's a lot of things that we don't have to have. We don't have to get new clothes. We don't have to get new TVs and computers and phones. And we don't have to get the newest cars and the newest houses. We don't have to, but we've already made the transition to the way we used to live to the way we are now. And it's easy to go up the income ladder or the to spend more. It's really hard to cut back, but basically this is what he's talking about here is he says content with real conveniences. Now a real convenient is not a luxury, I mean, I have an Apple Watch. Okay, I don't need an Apple Watch, but it's so convenient that I don't have to take my phone out of my pocket when somebody texts me. I can just look and see, oh, that's the text. Or I don't have to pull my phone out of my pocket to see what time it is. I can just go like this. So that's a convenience. That's not a real convenience. The real convenience is like, I don't know, it's convenient that a chicken lays an egg and you can eat it. That's a real convenience, you know what I'm saying? So being content with those simple things that are not costly, and then he says he finds he can have a way of life free from entanglements that appear best, though the income is small.
I had, just real quick, my friend hated her job, and she came in with a new car, and I said, why did you buy a new car? She said, I need a new car to get to my job. I'm like, you bought a new car to get to the job you hate.
Yeah.
It's
But I
like,
think started different.
And then you got to buy a suit because it's a nice job, and you need to wear nice clothes at your nice job so people don't look at you a certain way.
right, but you can
And then you're working so you can pay for the stuff that lets you keep the job.
Right, that
that you
you hate.
hate.
But when we bought our first house in 1972, that house was $25,000, and when we moved to Florida 3 years early, it was $10,000. Now, thank God we bought a house because it's been 10 years since we paid a mortgage. Now we are reaping the benefit.
Yeah.
But at that time, all the women I knew had to go to work because they could never own a house. But once they got the job, they did have to buy any kind of car to get to that job, and it had to be reliable. Then they started to go out for lunch because they were at the office. Then your kids need a few new clothes. You can't make them anymore. When I was young, I made their clothes. You can't do that anymore. You don't have time.
Yep.
So I think I'm always wanting to remember that unless you're making $60,000 a year, life is a struggle, and you have to have those two jobs.
I'm going to look here. This is I'm not going to find it, or it's going to take too long. So I started reading 2007. I resigned from my job abruptly for good reasons, and we had to make some major changes financially just to kind of keep going. And I was working for a tutoring company and a company that produced books for kids to study for test taking. So I'm using my English degree to kind of work in these areas and getting a lot less, but it was a good thing for our family to make the change, So along the way, fortunately, I found some books they're like called Simple Living or something like that. I want to say the lady's first name is Eleanor, but I don't know that that's right. She had a whole series of books on simple living. Another category is called minimalism. So there's this movement, this would have been early 2000s, late 90s, early 2000s, for people who were trying to intentionally live the life that they wanted to live. And basically what they were saying is, if you're willing to make sacrifices, material sacrifices, and cut in all these different ways and just keep things simple, what will happen is you'll have more time to do with your life what you want. So you're not commuting to the job that pays a lot and then paying for like cars and clothes and all this. Instead, you could work other ways. So it's all this kind of, we needed these people to put together strategies for making life simple. And at the time, because we didn't have much money, it's like, well, we're going to need to make it simple to make it work. We kind of just jumped in and made it like a really purposeful, meaningful thing. And it's amazing when you find out how much stuff you don't need. And then you have time to spend doing stuff that you like with the people that you like. And it's a good thing. And it is by not chasing after more, because as soon as you enter into that, like he says here at the bottom, if you do have an increase in wealth because you make that a priority, the desire for wealth will just increase. So when you see how many, there's a lot of millionaires today, and there's a lot of billionaires today, and you might ask yourself, why does Warren Buffett still work? Why does Elon Musk still work? And why do these other people, why do they still work? They have enough money for millions and millions of people. They could, if they just gave it away, it would be like having millions of people having jobs for the rest of their lives. They could a whole generation of people could retire or something like that. But the thing is, like, the desire for wealth just grew when more wealth came. And it became the thing itself that was, and so this is the thing. I don't think we're going to experience that feeling of the desire for wealth like those people that I mentioned, because they're like on a totally different level than we are.
Yeah, it's like the other day I was in the house and I was looking at things and I said, when last did I use something?
Yeah.
Why did I buy it?
Right.
To just look at it.
Yep.
You know?
Yeah, the simple living strategy, what they would say is, if you're not using something, put it in a box.
Yeah.
And put it to the side. Let 6 months or a year pass. Go back into the box. If you still haven't used it and you haven't if you haven't said like, oh, where's that thing, and had to go to the box, if it ended up sitting there for 6 months or a year and you didn't need it, then just send it to Goodwill. You know?
And when I go
Buy another. Yeah.
on the fabric in that shed, I start packing them. And my neighbor, when I was taking, she came over and she said, oh, I know a friend of mine who will take some. And the lady came and took some, and I took the rest. No, when I go into the shed, no, it's light, I don't get so confused. I keep giving away. I said, Tim, you and whatever they are, selling a dress for $15 and $20, and you have fabric there, it is more than that per yard.
That's when I had to quit sewing, when it cost me more to buy the fabric than what I could buy. That's what China did to this country.
Yes.
They made it so cheap to buy clothes.
So I keep saying, nobody wants to make a dress anymore.
Yeah.
Can't afford it.
Right.
And they could, when you see they show you a book with
Patterns.
with a $10, $20.
Mhm.
What can you go into a store and do to make a dress for $20?
And another part of this thing, this increase, it's not just a desire for wealth, but when we are in the process of accumulating stuff, our attention span gets worse. So it's like we get something just because we're bored.
Yes.
It's not because we need it
Need it.
or because it broke or anything like that. I remember my grandpa like never threw anything away. He always fixed it. And he always had like all this old stuff that he had fixed over and over. And until it really, really broke, he would never get anything new. It can be done. I visited, I had the privilege in 2004 of visiting Cuba, and they have all these amazing cars from the 50s,
Oh, yeah, they're
American
beautiful.
cars from the 50s. They're still running 50, 60 years later, and it's because, oh, you can fix it.
Those are simpler.
But we don't do that. We're like, well, I could fix it, but I'm just bored.
My
I'm just
brother-in-law paid $30,000 for one of those cars so he could fix it up.
All right, blessed be the tie that binds. Let me make sure we got the same words here. Blessed be the tie that binds is verse 1. Before the Father's throne is verse 2. When we asunder part is verse 3. Is that correct? Okay. Blessed be the tie that binds our hearts in Christian love, the fellowship of kindred mind is like to that above. Before our Father's throne, we pour our heart and prayers, our fears, our hopes, our aims, our wants, our comforts and our cares. When we asunder part, it gives us inward pain, but we shall still be joined in heart and hope to meet again. All right, thanks for being here.
Thank you, that was so good, as usual.